Hey, Randy Joe here, and welcome back to the channel, where if you've been following along, every month or so, we've been covering a different album in part of the Kate Bush discography, going from the beginning of her discography with, of course, the Kick Inside, all the way to the very end, which will be, of course, 50 Words for Snow. But that, of course, is not the album we're doing today. Instead, we're doing her second to last LP, an LP that is a reworking of her previous albums, The Red Shoes and The Sensual World, that, of course, being the album Director's Cut. Now, like I said, this is an album that she is essentially redoing her past projects in a way, that being The Sensual World as well as Red Shoes, two albums that followed her incredible magnum opus, Hounds of Love, my personal favorite Kate Bush album so far. The Sensual World, on a first listen for me, though, if you've been following the channel, you know, I was not too fond of, surprisingly. I was a little disappointed. I think my expectations for it were just too high. However, funny enough, since then, I've come around on The Sensual World. I actually find it to be quite a joy to listen to. I find its subtleties to be its greatest strength. I find it to be a record that certainly grows with repeated listenings. However, The Red Shoes had the opposite effect. On my first reaction for that, I was pretty ecstatic about it. I loved it. Thought it was a great record. Thought it offered, kind of what I wanted from Kate for the most part, even though it wasn't too grand or epic of an undertaking for her. However, since listening to it for the first time, The Red Shoes is one that I don't really find myself going back to that often. In fact, the more I listen to it, the more I think I find it to be one of her weakest, unfortunately. So, interesting how both records had a completely opposite effect on me, and now today we're going to listen to Director's Cut, where she completely reworks some of the tracks from those albums. Now, of course, if you're a Kate Bush fan, you know that reworking here doesn't necessarily mean, from what I've read, completely redoing the songs. These tracks do keep some of the original elements in place, sometimes just changing the key in which it's performed to better match Kate Bush's more matured vocals. But it seems like some of these tracks are almost entirely revamped and redone vocally, production-wise, the whole 9 yards. In preparation for this one as well, one last note, I did put together the little playlist here of the original track list that is being mimicked here, both records. And, I listened to this for the last week or so in preparation to kind of get better acquainted with the sequencing and these tracks individually. That way, when I hear this LP here, Director's Cut, I can perhaps offer up a better assessment. But of course, kicking it off, we've got Flower of the Mountain, which is not the OG title. The original title for this track would be, of course, the title track for the album, The Sensual World. But let's get into it. Flower of the Mountain, which, as far as I know, doesn't rework too much. And this one kicks off with the bells. This one here is one of the few tracks to break the chain of being lowered in a key like many of the album's counterparts. However, I do want to say, not only does this track retain the original key, but it retains the lyrics that Kate initially wanted to use when asking permission for the monologue of the Ulysses characters Molly Bloom. Kate initially asked the estate for it, which she was, of course, denied at the time. Now, of course, with this re-recording, they seem to have granted her permission. So these lyrics, already a bit of a difference. There's like that weird swiping sound effect. Am I crazy? Also, of course, her vocals different. Definitely, wow. Crazy, absolutely crazy hearing her difference in maturity vocally, because of course there is a good 2 decades, maybe even, 2011 this came out. It would be about 2 decades, I would say. 2 decades of maturity here on her voice. You could certainly hear it. And personally, with her last LP, Ariel, I love her matured voice. I love the deeper tone in it.
16 years ago, my God, after that flower of the mountains. So we are flowers on a woman's body.
I believe that's the original lyrics in play there. Still keeps that kind of like sensual eeriness. It's, man, it's jarring hearing the difference, and I'm not like necessarily put off. I'm just shocked. Not just the instrumental difference, but of course her vocals. It's very different. I'm expecting to hear those original lines come in, hear those original vocal performances come in, but of course, it's such a difference, such a contrast. Very shocking. It's like that weird swiping effect. Kind of added to this one.
And how he kissed me stepping out of the page into the sensual world.
A gentle kind of glimmering playfulness in the background there. Feels kind of new to this take as well. Like a slight metal sound.
And then I asked him with my eyes to ask again.
I'm conflicted about this one. I think there are elements I like about this, but I'm trying to distinguish whether or not the elements I like are just those original elements from the sensual world. That being said, I like the kind of new lyrics, the new take here. It's nice to see Kate kind of deliver on what was her original concept. That being said, would I play this over the original, which I think is going to be the question for most of this LP? I don't think so. I'd play the original Sensual World title track over this one, simply because I do think that is a very beautiful, meticulous, careful, and delicate track. And her voice back then does fit the atmosphere better, in my opinion. Again, I like her aged voice. I like her more matured voice. It's a nice contrast between the very high-pitched, schoolgirl voice that people call it. I like the contrast, but in this context, in this specific track, I think I would take the OG Sensual World. But still, I can't diss it too much. I respect the fact that she was able to deliver on her original concept, which I think at the end of the day, as an artist, I think most artists would be very happy to be able to deliver on such a thing. Here's the Song of Solomon for the next one, which is off of The Red Shoes. I'm very excited to hear Deeper Understanding because I love that track in its original iteration. Also, this woman's work is fantastic. So I'm worried, but I'm excited. None of these lyrics want to load. This one feels... This one's already... Oh, this one's very different. Definitely slower, too. I love her backing vocals, too. Love the reverb added here in the chorus. Love the echoey kind of factor. I think it was on there on the original from what I gather, but here it feels a lot more evident, a lot more prominent, adds much more depth. I think this track in general feels more in depth on this LP, so far at least. Oh, and this one has got certainly more atmosphere and a greater use of space kind of added to it. Oh, and the gentle sort of pitter-patter of those drums, that percussion, also feels much richer on this track. Wow. I love just it's such a silly delivery of a line. It's such a silly line in general. Yeah, that's the Wop Bam Boom, I remember, was funny in its original context, and it still makes me laugh on here, especially because this one feels even more textured, even more dramatic, even more, atmospheric, really. Then you slide in that Wop Bam Boom. She hits it hard on this one. It's still funny to me, but I do think this version of Song of Solomon, at least instantly, comes across a little bit more interesting to me, especially that just great sense of space and texture throughout it. It's much more palpable of a track than the original mix. Let's go into Lily. Which I believe was a tribute, if I'm not mistaken.
From whom all things proceed.
If it was not mistaken, it was a mentor to her.
Unveiled to us the face of the
spiritual healer,
spiritual sun,
Lily Conford.
hidden by a disk of golden light, that we may know the truth.
Keeping in her original
do our whole duty
intro.
as we journey to thy sacred feet.
R.I.P. to Lily, by the way. Oh. It's got a bit of an electronic element to it. Oh. Interesting, this one. A much more I want to say electronic, colder demeanor to it. Still feels very 90s though. Kind of remind me of 90s Bowie era. It's like this one too is extended lyrically. I could be wrong, but definitely feels like a much more extended version. A great chorus in the original mix, a great chorus here. At the end of the day, doesn't matter how you rework it, that chorus is pretty great, pretty catchy, pretty fun. Pretty smooth. Still belting it out at her age. I'm not sure the exact age she would be here, but certainly a much more matured woman. She would have been in her early 50s. And man, she's still belting it out. There's a fire in her. Like that whole that part there that went to the very end, a much more electronic, colder, kind of mean sounding. Oh, can we pause, please? Relax, Kate. Here, we'll get to the song in a second. Lily, honestly, compared to the original, very electronic sounding. I think the percussion too felt more, I want to say, ripe. I don't know how to describe it. But there's something about this track that feels more fiery, feels more urgent. Her passion and her vocals in that second half too, where she really belts it out, it comes through strong. Do I like it more than the original? It's really hard to say. I don't think it's so incredibly different that it's a one or the other for me. But I like the original and I like this version here too. It is a track that even the original one did grow on me. So hearing it here, I love the chorus and I love the delivery overall. Nothing bad to say, but nothing too complimentary to say either, I guess. Here's Deeper Understanding, which the original track from Sensual World I loved. I think it was very ahead of its time. I think it's very current. I want to know how she updates it because the original one's fantastic. How do we... It's already a very futuristic track of its time. Which, again, very relevant track. Oh. I feel like she held it a bit longer than normal there. Oh. I'm scared of this one. This reminds me of that really weird, this is my brain right here, that disturbing robot from like the early 2000s that sang that really creepy song. It was like a huge thing on the internet if you were around at the time. Let's just play the clip. Is that not the most terrifying thing you've ever seen? Apparently that was just some guy's art project, so nothing, menacing about it. But that's what this reminds me of. It gives me nothing but the heebie-jeebies. So I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. It does sound like it's her vocals, though. Somehow mutilated. Like auto-tuned and chopped up. Very interesting chorus, though. Wow. This one's longer, too. 6.5 minutes. A full, 2 minutes longer than the original. Honestly, maybe a bit too weird, even for Bush standards. Jarring. Creepy. Creepy is the only way I can describe this chorus. I feel like it's lost some of its kind of romantic muster that was in the original mix. Maybe there's a dystopian kind of aspect tied into this one more. Oh. Wow, it's like shutting down. I do like how bold this one is. Like, maybe the most bold rework we've heard on the album so far. For sure is, I think. Of those distant Saharan chants of Kate's. Very withdrawn ambient focus too, instrumentally. Love the gentle percussion throughout this one. It's a nice, like, ever so gentle kind of prodding percussion. Oh. Even got a harmonica sliding into the mix. This one's so reworked. It's like a desperation here from her, it would seem. Weird, like almost she like plugging herself in. Maybe she's becoming one with machine here. Oh my goodness. Some good sampling work too, kind of worked into really elevate that technological electronic feel. Wow. Deep understanding. What a rework. Also terrifying. That was a scary track. The chorus on that one, when it came to the computer speaking, really put me on edge, really made me feel uneasy. It's kind of grotesque in its delivery, yet at the same time I feel like very forward thinking, very outside the box. 20, 30 years from now, this version of the track might be seen as a more bold, even more ambitious, more forward-thinking track than the original. Because I heard the original and I thought, wow, this thing is so far ahead into the future thematically. Sonically, though, I feel like this one might be seen one day as the greater kind of outing and interpretation of the idea. It's kind of hard to pick and choose between this one and the original. The original one feels more romantic still, in a sense. It feels like this kind of falling in love with her device is more sweet and not nearly as dystopian as this one here, which feels almost like she is kind of becoming one with machine by the end and completely giving herself up for this cold device. It feels definitely more disturbed in this interpretation, which I really like. I love how reworked this one is. So I'm not even able to pick and choose. It's like a new track. Honestly, it honestly feels like a whole new song with that version. Wow. Interesting. Very interesting. Let's go into the red shoes. There's nothing more to say. Deeper understanding. Extended. Interesting. This one already has more reverb on it than the original, that's for sure. Which I think is how she works in the new atmosphere. As much as I like the texture she's working into the album, the atmosphere that feels more layered and reverb focused, the playfulness of the original feels better. Like, there's a playfulness here, but I feel like the modern production of it loses the original's playfulness to an extent. Oh. I think I like the original more. This one it feels, might be a hot take. This one's feeling kind of dull, even with this kind of more elevated part coming in. Not as much kind of punch to it, honestly. Like, I feel like that part that's elevated should be punchier for sure. Too hushed for my liking. Yeah, I don't. There's nothing to say about this one personally. I just think it feels more dull. I thought this one would feel even punchier than the original. I thought this one would feel more explosive. But honestly, I feel like it is a pretty lackluster rendition. I feel like I'm being maybe I'm being too hard on it, but like, I found myself really coming around and loving this title track, especially really just loving the energy that's in it. And I feel like on this version, the energy feels a lot more diminished and kind of flat, personally. Let's go into this woman's work. Now, this woman's work is one of the best on the Sensual World. It is a very delicate track. It is a very beautiful track. It is maybe one of the best tracks for sure on the Sensual World. How will it be reworked here? Will it be an improvement? I sincerely doubt. I think the original is just so great, but it adds an extra 2 minutes, which I do think is interesting. This album seems to take a lot of the tracks and extends them quite a bit. Even Red Shoes had an extra minute or so put on there. But this woman's work, let's get into it. This adds an extra, like I said, I think it's 2 minutes, an extra 3 minutes actually. So pretty much doubles the length of the original. But let's get into it. Love how shimmery this intro is. I don't remember. It's such a gentle open.
Now starts the craft of the Father.
See why it's double the length. It's much slower in nature.
I should be crying, but I just can't let it show.
Still retains the emotion. Man, this one's very spacey. So much space used on this track.
Give them back to me.
I'm giving it a like, so what does that tell you?
Give me that little kiss. Give me your hand.
The outro of the original hit me pretty hard when I heard it. Wondering how this one will compare. This one's very like ambient and reverby more than anything. The ambient focus though, big fan. I love some good ambient music. So kind of doing a reiteration of this track with an ambient focus, I'm not complaining.
I should be hoping that I can't stop thinking of all the things I should have said that I never love. I should have given, but I didn't. All the things we should have done that we never did. All the things we should have given, but we didn't.
Really angelic backing vocals giving into that. That ambience is very angel-like.
Make it go away.
Ooh. Ooh. Cutting it out when she said make it go away.
Just make it
What a
go away.
what a great detail. I love the ambient nature of this one. I love the slower focus of this one. How does it compare to the original? I mean, it's basically a new song. This is like what she did with Deeper Understanding, where I feel like she took the themes and the ideas, completely reworked it in a way that feels very refreshing, unique, and in itself original. Again, if there was a gun to my head and I could only pick one, I would pick the original. The emotion, obviously, on the original's version is far more palpable, far more interesting, hits you very directly. But this one, instrumentally, I'm a sucker for some nice space, for some nice ambience, for just a very delicate nature. This delivers on that regard. So picking between the two, I mean, it is, I would say, really all it comes down to is what the vibe is. Are you wanting something that is much more heartbreaking and much more emotive? You check out the Sensual Worlds version. But if you want to check out something that is more meticulous and slower and ambient, maybe more relaxed, yet still, obviously, emotional, then you check out this version here. So honestly, no complaints. I was reading here that this is considered to be the most controversial. I guess it received some heavy criticism according to genius.com here. but still, people call it moving, unsettling, and quietly spectacular, which I also certainly agree with. So I can see why people might not like it, but if you treat it as a whole new track, which I think you really should treat this album as, kind of new versions of these songs, then this is a solid track. I don't want to try to do too much. Like, I didn't want to get into comparisons too much, but how could you do a remake album without comparing? I feel like it is just inevitable. Let's go into moments of pleasure.
Think about
Even this version is very slow. Actually matures. Ariel had some really slow ones on it. This one has some slow ones on it. And as far as I can tell, 50 Words for Snow is also much slower and meticulous. And as someone who likes that kind of music,
lying,
it's right up my alley. But it's interesting.
lying on a beach somewhere. I think about us darling.
An absence of instruments. That's what I
The case
completely
of
didn't notice.
George the Wipe. Oh God, I can't stop laughing. This sense of humor of mine.
Yeah, now I definitely noticed that.
It isn't funny at all. Talking about it.
Oh. I like that texture. No chorus, just humming. Vocally, a very different performance on this one, too. The piano mixed with the humming, it's enough to make a grown man cry. Very, like, this one's just very raw, honestly. There's nothing flourishing here to overdo it or take away.
Smurf playing his guitar refrain.
You could see these distant memories, you know?
Hey there, Teddy. Spinning in the chair at Abbey Road. Hey there, Michael. Do you really love me? Did you really love me?
Oof. God. That track in itself was already pretty emotional in the original mix, but man, slowing it down, I think it's slower, but adding that piano and the humming, that's a delicate track. That is a very different take on the original. Not as soaring vocally too. Her vocals are very withdrawn and feel kind of defeated on that one. It almost feels like she's giving up vocally, and struggling to get the words out. I'm loving this album so far. I do have to say, director's cut, and I'll save most of it for the end, but overall, you know, it's not gonna be my favorite Kate Bush album. I don't think it's gonna be many people's, maybe anyone's favorite, to be honest, but it's so bold, and I'm loving the liberties she's playing with here. Here's Never Be Mine, which I believe was off of, if I'm not mistaken, Red Shoes, correct? I am incorrect. Central World.
This is where I wanna be. This is what I need.
Vocally, honestly, she feels pretty
Where I need to be.
strong throughout this album and replicating the sound.
This is what I want. But I know
When she chose who's to.
it'll never be mine. This is where I need to be. Oh, this is what I want. This is where I wanna be.
I love the percussion on here, but the guitar work might be a bit too much of a contrast for my liking.
This is what I need.
I feel like it's just cutting to the mix
But I know
too strongly for my, preferences. Yeah, this one certainly not as interesting as the original mix so far. Personally, I find this one just much more bland, colder in sound. Not that the original is even one of my favorites either. All right, that's it for Never Be Mine. That's yeah, not nearly as engaging for me as the original mix. Not that I remember that being a song that I enjoyed even on the Central World all that much. I did give it a like, but I don't remember it being one of my favorites. But let's go to Top of the City. The rest of the tracks here are off, of course, the Red Shoes. So let's see how those work, because I feel like that album probably could use the most reworking. I do like this song though in the original.
We're just a couple of pigeons a living up on the angel's shoulders.
Holy. Much more in your face, explosive sound right off the bat. I do like the percussion throughout this album. Definitely feels much more well produced, very clean across the board. Nice warmth to it.
Take me up to the top of the city. It's just one thing we can do about it. Take me up to the top of the city.
I do like the contrast in chorus here, the gentle come down from the very explosive verses that she's delivering this time around. Very in your face sort of production.
Keep going up to the top of the city. Put me up on the angel's shoulders.
I still feel like... Oh. Does that do it? I think that does it. I still feel like in comparison to the original, the original just feels like it delivers a much more cleaner, well-produced mix. I don't know if well-produced is the word I should use, but a better mix overall. More engaging, really, is what it is. I found that one a little bit too similar, not nearly as distinct of a rework. So at that point, you know, it's almost like a question of like, why rework it at all? Here's It's So Is Love. Oh. Remember, I love those kind of synths on the original, and I still love them. Here they are.
You do. We let it in, we give it out. And in the end,
Carrier here in the...
it's all about.
I feel like the maturity in her voice here is definitely more distinct again
It must be love.
in that comparison. But she is singing deeper here too, I think, intentionally.
I give you my tweet, and so is love.
Oh. Oh, I like those. The way she slid in on those overdubs.
We used to say
Not sure who our guitarist is here. I don't remember that in the original mix either.
but now we see
But I like the sparse arrangement that he carries there.
and so is love.
Really great deep bass. Running underneath.
And whatever happened, I love you more.
Runtime too, pretty much the same.
More for it.
And even tempo wise, this one does feel similar, so it doesn't feel like it's as grand of a rework.
Just for the sake of love.
I think that's an organ. And I don't remember that in the original mix either. But I love the way it's coming in this back end. There's some nice, I would say, varied instrumental on this mix.
Can't you see?
Ooh. That guitar too. Just plucking away. I liked, again, the sparseness of the arrangement of the guitar, that organ that came in the back end. And even though the runtime's pretty much the same and the tempo seems about the same, at first I was kind of questioning how much of a rework it really was. But I feel like that one developed much more gradually and kind of evolved much more interestingly than the original mix. Let's go into the final track here, Rubberband Girl, which closes out this album, yet kicks off the Red Shoes. And I remember I liked Rubberband Girl's much more traditional, I would say, rock focus. It's maybe not her most adventurous track, but maybe she will be with this version of it to close it out. Already very different. Oh. It's like acoustic. It's like withdrawn. Also has a bit more of a kind of 2000s focus on those guitars at the beginning. This one's very subdued. I don't know how I feel about her vocals. Wow, this one feels boring. I don't like this version at all. This feels like a demo. Like none of it feels fleshed out. If you told me this was the demo for the track before it was released, the original, I'd believe you. That's some synths. Unfortunately, Kate, these synths aren't saving anything. This track is already a dud for me. You can add as many instruments as you want, Kate. A harmonica, the synths. Still feels like a demo. Harmonica played very well. It's played very well here, but it's not saving anything. Except itself, I guess. Alright, that does it for Rubberband Girl. And that does it for Director's Cut by Kate Bush. Rubberband Girl, though, let's talk about it real quick. Let's just say what I've been saying. Underdeveloped. Feels like a demo. Doesn't really offer anything up that the original didn't give you. In fact, it takes away what the original gave you. I think the original, obviously, much more punchy, much more interesting, a much more full production. Well, I do feel like The Red Shoes, is an album where she kind of continues on the same wavelength that she was already working on. It doesn't, revolutionize anything, doesn't change anything too grand. Rubberband Girl kicks it off pretty strong, and I do think it is a great track. So this version of it, very subdued and very bland and very boring, doesn't do anything for me. But the LP in general here, Director's Cut, I do have to say, does do something for me, which is I like the concept of the album. I love the idea of reworking a past work. I wish more artists would do this. I would have loved to have seen what, of course, David Bowie could have done. I would have loved to have seen what Mr. Michael Jackson here in the background could have done. Would have liked to have seen what many legends could do, and even legends, of course, that are working today. Imagine, I don't know, The Weeknd reworking House of Balloons or something. That'd be absolutely wild to see, even if it's an inferior version of it. Just the idea of, evolving as an artist and then going back and completely redoing earlier albums decades later is very interesting to me. And on this album here, there are some tracks here that are completely unique and original in their undertaking. Deeper Understanding and This Woman's Work are definitely the most distinct examples of it. This Woman's Work doubles the length of the original, goes for a much more ambient focus, adds a lot of reverb, completely changes the emotion and the kind of concept in a way. And Deeper Understanding, talk about changing the trajectory. You know, the original, that one feels much more romantic, whereas this version feels much more eerie, disturbed, and dystopian. So what I like about this album, and what I think will kind of keep me coming back, and what probably keeps most people who enjoy it coming back, is the fact that some of these tracks are, in a sense, entirely original. You know, other than, obviously, some of the original elements and lyrics being carried over, obviously to keep it tied to those original tracks. Aside from those elements, some of the tracks on here are pretty much entirely independent. And that is, in my opinion, very bold, very brave as an artist, and something that I wish and would love to see more artists do. But of course, when it comes to Kate Bush, she is, you know, one of a kind and does what many artists would never do, such as, like this here, reworking earlier projects. But that does it for today's video. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe to follow along and listening to more Kate Bush albums. Actually, just one more. Let's be real here. That, of course, being her final LP, and hopefully not her final ever, but that being the album 50 Words for Snow. Now, like I said, Director's Cut is sort of like a mini album in a sense. It's not a full-length project to some. It's not necessarily a new album. So in that regard, I will get that next video out much sooner. It will not be a month-long wait like I've been doing. Hopefully in just a week or so. So, as always, my name is Randy Joe. I appreciate you watching, and I'm signing off.